Communism is a mortal threat to American liberty. Communism is a loser, and it always will be. The communist system is the opposite of the American system, and the communist system has never worked. They're communists. They want to destroy our country. We're not going to let that happen.
You heard the president talk about how he wants to effectively double the funding for national defense. Look, we live in dangerous times. We're fighting communism on our own shores, and we're fighting evil terrorists and tyrants around the world. And we have to be able to protect our national security.
That's Speaker Mike Johnson, laser focused on fighting communism on our own shores, taking President Trump's lead in labeling Democrats as communists. And then yesterday, House Majority Leader Steve Scalise added this to those warnings.
Look, the Bolshevik takeover of the Democrat Party is in full swing. And communism is on the ballot this November against freedom. Make no mistake about that.
Bolsheviks in the year 2026. Welcome back to Morning Joe on this Wednesday, July 22nd. I'm Jonathan Lemire. Ali Vitale still with us. And join the conversation, we have former U.S. Senator and MS Now political analyst Claire McCaskill, contributing opinion writer for the New York Times, Molly Jong-Fast, and the president and CEO of the National Urban League, Marc Morial. Thank you all for being with us this morning. It's a great group. Claire, start with you. Communism seems to be, at least for the moment, the Republicans' closing argument as we barrel toward November. That this is, they have, first of all, mixed up communism and socialism. And to be fair, like a lot of people don't know the differences. But they're now reached back into the time machine and brought back the Red Scare, something that most Americans under 50, under 40 really don't have any memory of. Is this something that you see potentially resonating with voters?
Well, desperate times call for desperate measures. And I think the Republicans are really struggling right now. They've got a widely unpopular war. They've got costs that have skyrocketed. They've got so many promises broken that it is really them reaching for something that polls well. And make no mistake about it, you know, when you poll communism, that is not a good thing in America, obviously, especially with older, reliable voters. It's not a good thing, especially with some people who have come here from countries that suffered under the kinds of regimes that they are referencing. But the Democratic Party is fine. We have some bright blue places where people further to the left has won primaries, but like last night in Arizona, Jonathan, we had a setup of a race between a moderate incumbent and a Democratic socialist, and the Democratic moderate won by a large margin in a primary in Arizona last night. So, yes, there have been a few candidates that have won that are further to the left, but I don't think the Republicans are going to win by trying to fool people into thinking the Democrats are communists. And by the way, I do worry about this, though, because look what they've done with elections. They've put something out there that's not true, and they say it over and over again. And pretty soon, via Fox News or what other way, people on the far right start consuming it and believing it. So I think the Democrats need to be careful here and assert themselves strongly that this is not the case, so they don't let this perception become a reality.
I think you're 100% right when it comes to the clarity necessary to knock down the election denialism that has become a stronger and stronger thread in the Trump side of the Republican Party, especially when you look at the election results out of Arizona last night, people like Andy Biggs being elevated to run for governor. But Molly, I want to pick up on a part of the thread that Claire is talking about here. The idea for Democrats that certainly communism and socialism are not the same, and there is not a large thread of the party that is saying they are democratic socialists. And yet I have heard angst from some of the more moderate Democrats, we'll call them, about the Democratic brand being at a low and the energy in the party being at the far left part of the spectrum. And I wonder how you think the party ends up moving forward in the midterms, but certainly after the midterms as they look to the presidential.
So I think we're still in such early days with this primary. I mean, what I have been struck by and what we're seeing, we still have more primaries to go in these midterm cycle, is that we're seeing just voters in my mind, from what I'm seeing with these results, voters still seem really angry and really anti-establishment, that we're seeing like the DCCC spending in some races and not necessarily getting their chosen candidates. And it's not, at least with the Arizona results from last night, not as ideological as you would think. Now, my question to you, Mark, is about this anger that we're seeing in the base. Clearly, some of this ties to a lack of affordability, right? People are feeling squeezed, and they're feeling as squeezed as ever. And you guys have this affordability agenda, and I'd love you to talk about it, because clearly affordability is about people not being able to afford their lifestyles.
So the entire conversation about Bolsheviks and communists is what I call a weapon of mass distraction, an effort to redefine the conversation, not around what the American people are painting about, but something very different. And those on the Democratic side shouldn't take the bait and should make sure that the conversation is about those things that are really creating anger and angst and affecting the American people. So our affordability agenda centers around, number one, a national living wage for all. We've got to deal with the depression in people's earnings, and the big way to do it is with a national living wage indexed inflation. Number two, the most significant driver of affordability now are housing costs that have increased astronomically since the year 2000. Two things we can do. Number one, take the housing voucher program, which has worked, and expand it so that it applies to all. Let me say this. What we spend this year on the war in Iran would pay 100% for an expansion of the housing voucher program. Our priorities are misplaced. Number three, we need an affordable housing trust fund to build the new units that we need, because we also have a supply problem. Those are a few examples. And then finally, let's repeal and replace this big, ugly bill. This fiscal plan, which is driving up inflation, driving up unemployment, causing more Americans to be without health care, to be without food security. There are a number of things we need, and the discussion should be about an affordability agenda going forward, and not get distracted and not get deceived into these ideological warfare or Bolsheviks and communists. Once again, it's a weapon of mass distraction. Don't take the bait.